All right, good evening and welcome to the Warrensville Heights City School District Work Session Board Meeting for February 12th, 2025. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. Board, do I have a motion?
Is there a speaker on?
You'll do roll call.
Roll call. All right, Dr. Rock, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Gator?
Yes.
Mr. Fuller?
Here.
Mrs. Moomin?
Here.
Mr. Freeman?
Here.
Mr. Roberts?
Here. Next, item 1.2, the approval of the agenda. Board, do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept item 1.2, which is the approval of the agenda. I'll second it.
Thank you very much. It's been properly moved and seconded. Dr. Rock, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mrs. Moomin?
Yes.
Mrs. Gator?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes, motion passes 5-0. The agenda is approved. Next, that brings us to item 1.3, school presentations. Mr. Jolly?
Yes, before we start our school presentations, I would like to bring up Ms. Thompson. She will be first in the school presentations, but we want to do a special presentation to a special group of young ladies. Last year, our gym teacher at the elementary school, Mrs. Shelatz, who is also the head girls football coach at Ursuline College. We started a flag football team probably 3 years ago in the high school. Ms. Shelatz, her passion for girls football resulted in her starting a team at the middle school and the elementary school. This is the elementary school. They played a game earlier this year. It was outstanding. They played a game against the middle school, which was I believe it was a tie score last week. But we wanted, as a board, to recognize these young ladies for their outstanding work in girls football. They all know how to catch the ball, throw the ball. It was very pleasing and rewarding to see them playing girls football, which is an upcoming sport. Hopefully it'll be a varsity sport soon. And due to Coach Shelatz, we will be in the front. So at this time, we'd like to bring up the team. I'll call them up. And Ms. Thompson, David, we get a picture with the board president and Principal Thompson and the girls football team. So Coach Shelatz, if you could come on up. Jordan Cruz. Armani Harris. Ayana Wilson. Adrian Burke. Bella Myers. Blair Myers. Norris Jackson. Capri Braswell. Mackenzie Blevins. Journey Gould. Riley Hales. Janiyah Willis. Come, you want to say something? Yeah. Sure. Ms. Thompson, you want to say something? Or about the girls?
I'm super proud of you ladies. Keep it up. Hard work pays off, as you know. And believe it or not, you can do anything you set your mind to it. And this is a prime example. So it does. Thank you.
Hold 1 second. We'll get a picture of my name.
Fourth and fifth.
Before Ms. Thompson begins, I just want to just give an overview of what's being done tonight with these presentations. Each school was charged to come in and provide a presentation of their progress from the beginning of the year to now. For those that don't know, our buildings are doing a lot of work to try to ensure that our students are getting the things that they need to be successful. So I want to describe how this process works. When a child is born, there's the expectation that when they start school and come to school to kindergarten, that everybody should know certain information. When a lot of places and districts, when you get students in kindergarten, depending on your home, is depending on how they come to school prepared. So the state of Ohio says every pre-K student should know this, every first kindergartner should know this. So what we have to do is, like doctors, is figure out where each student is. So they come to school in more affluent places. Kids come to school having that basic knowledge, basic understanding, because maybe their parent was at home or they went to a nursery school or whatever the reason is. And even those places, kids don't come ready. So our job is it's like we're building a house. So pre-K is the first floor. So we got to figure out what they don't know in first grade, pre-K, try to fill that gap. Whatever gap is not filled, they're still going to kindergarten, but now you have to build another floor to the house. But if the foundation of that floor is not good, our job is to fill that foundation and then still build the first floor. Each year, there's an expectation that kids have to grow a grade level. Let's equate that to a floor of a house. But if the year before the floor is not filled, where it's not done, you're building on a foundation that's not solid. So every day, if we go to kindergarten, if a kid comes to us late, wasn't here for kindergarten, we finally had gaps. Now we're doing everything we do to fill the gaps, but then they're going to first grade. So first grade, there's a whole nother set of expectations. We got to move them here, but then we got to look back, and that's what intervention is, to try to fill that gap. So just imagine, and we have some kids that started school at 7 years old in kindergarten. So now we got to go fill 2 years of gaps to try to catch them up. The importance of having stable homes and stable families is crucial, because the more kids move, the less information that they get, because again, when you're moving all the time, you're not getting that steady information or that steady education. We have a 20% transient rate in Warrensville Heights, so 20% of the kids each year are moving around. So kids who, and we did the study, kids who've been with us from kindergarten to 12th grade, we got about a 98% graduation rate of kids who've been with us in kindergarten, because we identified what their weakness is in kindergarten. We filled the gap in kindergarten, and each year we continue that process. But every year we get new students that come in. We only have 1,400 students in 2014. We got over 2,000 now. We get new students every year in recycling. They come in. And some people come for 6 months and leave. Some people come for 1 year, come back 2 years later. So we're always in this process. So as you look at this data today, you will see that we have students that are struggling, but you'll see that inside of that data, we are taking kids from where they are and we're growing them. Our district grows students. We find out where they are. We have intervention teams. We have all these different dedicated resources to find exactly, almost every kid has an individualized plan for them to grow. And that's unique to us because we understand that everybody comes from a different situation. We understand that we have to build this house, because at the end of the day, when a kid leaves here, they got to be able to compete with anybody in the world. They got to be able to think critically. They got to be able to read, write. They got to be able to go anywhere and be successful. Don't nobody care that they didn't get in kindergarten. Don't nobody care if they didn't get in second grade. They expect when our kids leave here, that they can compete with anybody. So we have to make sure they have the resources and the tools that they need to be successful. So that's a very process that you got to be committed and dedicated to. And it takes caring people. It takes people who just don't look at the data and say everybody failing. That's not the case, because we have to look at each individual and see exactly where they started from. And then we got to provide them the support, because everybody going to turn 18 years old. They're going to graduate from high school and they're going to go in the world, and don't nobody care where you came from or what's not. They expect you to know this information. They expect you to be able to move on this information and be successful with the information. So our job and our goal is to make sure that our kids can compete, not in Cleveland, but in the whole world. And it takes the group of people that you see here, all our teachers, please stand. The teachers that's present today, or principals, everybody just stand. And I say this about, and I'm gonna be. I want everybody, because you're gonna see some numbers that look good, some that don't look good. But every single day we are filling gaps. We're making sure people's foundation is set so that when they leave, because the ultimate measure is when you leave, you are able to read, write, think critically. You are confident. Confidence is confidence is one of the most important things that you can have when you go in this world, because as we know, we're gonna meet a lot of obstacles. We'll have a lot of people tell you what you can't do. And you got to believe in yourself that you can do it. And I think our school district does a good job of producing confident children. And they have to be knowledgeable students and smart students, and students who are able to adapt to any situation. That's our goal. And I want to preface that because I don't think everybody understands or have a complete understanding on education, because people look at numbers and say you got 45% pass. Well, we started when only 10% of the kids had grade level understanding. I'm not saying that's a low number, but I'm just using that as an example. And we moved it to 40%. But if we look in the numbers, we say the kids that started in kindergarten to 10th grade, we had 70%. But now that we have this influx of new students, the number drops. So we get new students, we're growing in new students, and ultimately, I think last year our graduation rate was 96%. We're getting them across the finish line into college. So without further ado, Ms. Thompson, you can start your presentation.
All right. Good evening, board. Good evening, staff and families and everyone who's here. Thank you for providing us the opportunity to kind of give you a glimpse, because it's just a glimpse of what's happening in our school building. Before I get started, I'm Takiba Thompson, building principal. I have Mr. Brian Draper, who's going to present some slides. I also have Coach Shaw, which is our culture coach. She will present some slides. I have our ELA coach, Ms. Barhorse here, as well as the math coach, Ms. Dickerson, who will present some slides during this presentation. So I wanted to start off with having an idea of our third graders who took the OST test back in October. And so the state of Ohio mandates our scholars to take the OST reading within this is them spending less than 60 days in the third grade. And so out of our scholars, we had 42 scholars who scored proficient or above on that test. And so what we did was we wanted to congratulate them. So we got them Warrensville hats and some certificates, and they got to wear their hats all day with the "No cap, we did that" slogan. So they were super excited about that. But in that picture, you see, again, less than 60 days in the third grade classroom. 8 of those students were advanced, 13 scored accomplished, 19 scored proficient, and 38 was basic, which I consider an opportunity. And then we did have 80 who were limited. And so, again, this was a test that's typically given at the end of the year to test their knowledge up to third grade that they took in the third grade after 60 days. So we were super excited to celebrate that. They got those results back in December. We have since then spoke with parents about the details of that result, because, again, third grade will take that test in April. So we want to make sure families understand the importance of it and everything that's going into our day-to-day instruction. So this is part of our data. This is our iReady reading data. What you're looking at is a comparison. Window 1 is kind of light, and that the scholars took that in August when they first got here. And then The darker window is the most recent, which was taken in January of 2025. And so what you see is our scholars decreasing our red, which is tier 3, from 47% to 31%, and that was a 16% decrease from that area. What you also see is some of those red kids from the first window move into our yellow, which is tier 2. And you see 16% of our kids move into our green grade level, which is where we want the majority of our kids. So we do see the red shrinking in our triangle. When you look over and you start talking about domains and what those domains include, Warrensville Heights Elementary School have been given the opportunity to learn a lot about the science of reading over the past few years. And so what we consider some of those things that we learned is transferring over into the phonemic awareness area, which is the top by domain. Next is phonics as well as high frequency. And so now with that information, coupled with our new curriculum, which you'll hear more about later in the presentation, we want to see it transfer over to the bottom, which is vocabulary, literature, and informational text, and that's more of a comprehension piece. So now that we have scholars understanding the mechanics of language and reading, we want to transfer that skill over by way of fluency, which you'll hear more about that, so that they can understand what they're reading and be able to score higher in the areas for comprehension. Next slide. Next part is for iReady is our math data. And again, window 1 is the lighter window, and the darker window is most recent. What you see is growth in all areas and all domains from the beginning of the year to the middle of the year. Our highest growth in that area was in the area of, numbers and operations and algebraic thinking. Most of our grade levels have gotten to geometry by way of the curriculum and what's being taught in the curriculum and the pacing chart for the curriculum. So kids are still being able to grow by way of spiraling information. Again, you have some scholars we decreased that tier 3 from 52% to 31%. In tier 2, we went from 45% to 54%. And then in tier 1, we had 3% in the beginning of the year on grade level or above, now at 15% at grade level or above. What I like to consider for reading and math when we look at these triangles is that yellow. I call that yellow opportunity. That yellow is an opportunity for our teachers and our teachers to meet our scholars where they are, close some of those gaps and put them on grade level. What we see with the red, again, that's one thing we do at Warrensville Heights Elementary School is we grow scholars. And so I am excited to see how our teachers will use the different techniques that we're putting in place to shrink that red from at risk. This slide is another piece of data. It's a totally different test. It's called an Acadience test. And in this test, you'll see at the top, the blue is above grade level, the green is at, yellow is below, and red is well below. So this test is typically taken as a one-on-one test. And again, a lot of opportunity for scholars to grow. Within the red, what we do with this Acadience test is look at each kid, and you'll hear that again later in the presentation during our NNI. But we take exactly the test and where the kids went wrong or what they got wrong and address those needs and those holes. A lot of red, especially in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, may come from fluency, which means they're not reading fast enough. So when we open up the actual assessment and we look at each kid, that's important to do because when you look at it like this, it does look alarming. It does. But when you look at each student and you see we do have a big population in that red who are reading, they're just not reading fast enough. They have to have a certain amount of words per minute in order to be considered on grade level, as well as retail and comprehension. Next slide. This is a picture that I captured of our testing team who was testing our scholars to show you how our Acadience is done. One-on-one scholars are asked to read the grade level material and then determine their oral reading fluency.
The next piece of data that I want to talk about is attendance, because attendance matters every day and every moment. And so what we want to encourage our families and help our families understand that with this new curriculum, you miss a day, you miss a ton. And so it is very hard for teachers to try and go back and fill in information that they learn, because the conversations are so organic and they are so engaging in the moment. It's hard for a teacher to try and reinvent that for a scholar who was absent and still continue to teach the class. And so with that being said, our attendance team is working on different incentives to incentivize kids coming to school. We do understand that kids get sick. We do understand that. And we don't want a parent to have to choose between sending my sick kid to school or not. So our incentives have a range of, if you miss 1 to 3 days versus just not missing any days, to just ensure that we are putting safety first. And so I wanted to put this in before we start talking about the curriculum. I thought it was important to put this in because the teachers are doing a lot of heavy lifting right now, as we are in our first year of CKLA curriculum. And so this contributes to some of the things that I will say, and I said about our reading scores. We work with a state support team rep from the Educational Service Center. This is our first year working with Rita Kroger. Every year for the past 3 years, we've had a different state support team person, but she was actually at a PD yesterday or the day before yesterday, and she sent this message, and I thought it was very important that my staff and everybody else understand that someone on the outside who visits multiple schools took the time out during her PD session to deliver this message. And the message states, I'm working with other districts in a PD session today, and I'm constantly reminded of the amazing structures you have in place to make ELA implementation process successful. There's so much work to do, but you are on the right path and going strong. I am not seeing this many other places, and you are truly models for area districts. I have referred to your teaching structures over and over when I'm questioned about how any of this hard work can happen. It should say happen, but she said happy. So I quoted her. That is from Ms. Rita Kroger from the Education Service Center State Support Team, and she stated that she's happy to be a part of it. So with that being said, I do want to bring up Ms. Barhorse, who's going to talk a little bit about our new reading curriculum, which is one of the ways we are going to help increase our scores, increase our scholars' knowledge, and their opportunities to learn.
Hello, I'm happy to be here. I'm excited to be back. Again, appreciate the opportunity to move forward with our adoption of core knowledge language arts, so we can provide the highest quality instruction possible for our scholars. And so one of the things that we have done on my maternity leave, in that stead, we had not given the beginning of year a survey to all stakeholders in my absence. However, once we returned and got things rolling, and thanks to my colleagues, we are one team, one vision, one goal. So the implementation team, despite my absence, has had been working with teachers. And then once I came back, I was able to pick back up with our team. One of the things that we did, because we valued the feedback from not only our teachers and our building leaders, which we collaboratively work with on a daily basis, but we also wanted to hear from families and our students as far as their thoughts of the adoption and how they were perceiving it and what they're seeing. And so with that, I have some data and some specific feedback that I'd like to share with you from each of our stakeholders regarding our implementation of our new reading curriculum. So starting with, you see a picture on here, Ms. Sullivan's third grade class, they're performing a reader's theater about Androcles and the lion. They were finishing up their unit, and that was one of their culminating activities that they were doing to apply knowledge. But collecting student feedback, we have a fourth grade friend who mentioned, I like it because it is different books and variety in the books. I like the medieval times and about people who lived a long time ago, and I like learning about the past more than learning about the present. which was very interesting. And then we had another 5th grade friend. The most interesting thing I learned about was different kinds of poetry. I just thought that poetry was about rhyming, but there's more to poetry than just one thing. And so that was just a sample of the feedback that we received from students, but that is an ongoing collection of responses from all grade levels. Moving into family feedback, so we had the opportunity to collect feedback from families for parent-teacher conferences from both of our buildings, for kindergarten at the Early Childhood Center, and then grades 1 through 5 at the elementary school. And as you can see, we had 72% of families report back that their child had talked about their learning in either phonics skills or reading or writing for CKLA at home. And as you can see, we have an overwhelming number of percentage of families that rated the effectiveness of CKLA literacy program in improving their child's reading skills at a 4 or 5, with only four families rating it at a 2 or a 3. Some feedback that we received, I feel good about the topics she's learning. He's getting more engaged. It's improving his reading comprehension. CKLA homework is challenging and thought-provoking. And then 3rd grade has become more expressive. My 3rd grader has become more expressive in observing details. And then taking us to our building leader and teacher feedback, which is really, really driving the efforts of our implementation team. And the supports that we're providing and constantly monitoring to make sure that our implementation is as successful and supported as possible. Some of the highlights, teachers find meeting with their teams, discussing lessons, and collaborating during team level meetings or PDs extremely helpful. And those discussions help clarify the curriculum and provide insight into best practices for teaching CKLA. One of the things that we did to support teachers, as we identified with our TBT, our teacher-based team protocols that we were meeting on weekly, is we revised those to incorporate more backwards planning and continuous monitoring of data so that teachers would be able to more intentionally plan for those units, seeing as this is also our first year of implementation and this is the first time that they're teaching many of these lessons. We wanted to intentionally dive deeper. Digital resources and tools, we also adjusted the way that teachers turned in their lesson plans to allow for more time deep diving into the planning, and then professional development and training. Teachers were valuing those PD sessions, being provided with new knowledge, strategies, and support for CKLA. In supporting their students successfully. Challenges, because we know that there are always challenges as well, so we want to acknowledge those, but also acknowledge that we are taking steps to address those continuously. So our feedback from our teacher feedback and building leader feedback on a survey we sent out was a need for additional student engagement resources, such as like tag outs, modeling, video recording of best practices, and then specific strategies. Writing, we recently had a writing PD this last week during parent-teacher conference week, and then our tier 2, 3 supports and differentiating tier 1 instruction. And then there's some data points on there too about CKLA is helping my students learn. Most teachers rated that a 3, 4, or 5, and then I'm confident in my ability to teach a full lesson with CKLA. Again, that's one of our goals, is to make sure teachers are supported in that way and feel confident with those, so we can then take next steps and further enrich and enhance student instruction. And that is all from me. And I'm going to pass you to my colleague, Ms. Dickerson, so she can give you some updates with our math.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So I want to start with talking about our no new instruction. So this time, primarily for the last couple of years, has been dedicated to ELA. We have just implemented a no new instruction for math, seeing that we have to fill some of those gaps, as Mr. Jolly talked about. So that started last week. This is a picture from our PD from last week, our professional development. The teachers had work time to work together with their groups and come up with what they needed to do for their no new instruction. Ms. Thompson has given them the autonomy to really focus in on what they needed per grade level, and how they want to utilize it. For example, the second grade team created a pre-assessment so that they can kind of see what the kids need and fill in those gaps. Then they're going to pull those small groups, and then they'll give a post-assessment. So really giving them the chance to focus in on what they feel that they need to do. They use the curriculum checklist. So they went into the iReady curriculum. They have prerequisite reports, instructional groupings, and it gives all of the resources for them. So that we went over that, just kind of reminding the teachers of how to go in and how to pull those reports. And then the student successes. Today we had our TBT in math, and some of the teachers said that the kids were excited. They were excited to have something different to do during their N and I time, and they were excited to do math. So that's really good. Next slide. So some of the math initiatives that we're doing, a lot of the teachers across grade level from kindergarten on up to fifth grade talk about fact fluency, that the kids need to know their facts. And it just keeps building. So from first, second, all the way up to fifth grade. So we've incorporated a math fact challenge that started this past Monday. It will go up until our math night, which is going to be March 13th. Please come out and see all of our families. We'll be playing games. We'll be going over OST and test prep. And then the other new thing that we have incorporated was having a specific day to talk about math. So during our TBTs, primarily what we've done before, first through third grade, kindergarten actually through third grade, was we would have our TBTs and we would talk about math and reading. So now we've switched that so that we have a dedicated day and time. And this means that we can dig a little bit deeper into the data. We can have more checkpoints and talk about specifically areas of concern or misconceptions and also successes in math. So that's been really good, having some of those the teacher feedback has been like, this is really good that we have a whole period to talk just about math. So that's some of the things that's going on in math and our math initiatives. Any questions? Thank you, guys.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Before I begin, this is my first time having an opportunity to come before you all. Let me back up. I'm Brian Draper. I'm one of the two assistant principals at the middle school. I'm at the elementary school, and I want to thank you for providing. Y'all caught that? I want to thank you for providing me the opportunity. I did not have the opportunity to come before you. Some of you I've spoken with individually, and thank you. And I want to thank you all collectively again. What I have an opportunity to talk about here is what you'll see on your screen is our progressive discipline chart at the elementary school. And so we know that if you come into our buildings, you see all of our PBIS signs all around the building. And, that's our positive behavior interventions and supports. And that is a prescriptive way for us to describe and to spell out explicit behaviors that are expected for our scholars in common areas. And so while our scholars know, they know how to behave and what the expectations are in the classroom, at the restroom, on the bus, in the assemblies, one thing that was missing was providing our teachers a way to speak the same language when engaging with our scholars who are not demonstrating pride. And so what we did was we introduced this progressive discipline chart. And so one of the unique things about this chart is it starts over every day. So we are giving grace, and our scholars receive grace every single day. So we won't, as we'll go through very quickly, but as we start on Ready to Learn, maybe a scholar leaves Thursday night and he's in the orange section. We don't come in on Friday and he starts over in the orange section. He or she starts back at the very beginning. So we have a prescriptive starting point for all of our scholars. That's the point where they're ready to learn. Every scholar comes in every day, and we operate under the assumption that they are ready to learn. As they move through the day, they may engage in some behavior or make choices that are not optimal. So then what happens is they get a verbal warning. They'll be asked to stop and think. Let's rethink what we did right there, and they'll have an opportunity to get back to work. Our third step will be that of a written reflection, and it comes in two different ways. So for our first and second graders, it looks like them going to a calm down corner where they can sit. We have some first graders, second graders that walk into the corner. They'll set a timer for 3 to 5 minutes, take that opportunity to decompress, to de-escalate, become regulated, and get back to instruction. With our 3rd through 5th graders, what we do is we have a written reflect. Let me back up. For all of our scholars, we have written reflection available for them as well, and they're all grade specific and grade level appropriate. So our 1st and 2nd graders have the opportunity to reflect on what they've done, and they can fill out face sheets with smiley faces, frowns that describe where they are, and they have the opportunity to reflect on what they've done and provide that to the teacher. The teacher then will have an opportunity to go over that with the scholar. And again, he or she is back to work. Our 3rd through 5th graders have a bit of a lengthier reflection sheet because they have the ability to write. And so they have those opportunities as well. Once we've gotten past the written reflection sheet, that is when we start having teachers issue classroom consequences. That could be loss of a privilege. It could be a lunch detention. But what it is, it still is allowing the teacher to have control over the behaviors and what goes on in his or her classroom. In addition to that classroom consequence, they have the option of calling a parent. Once that parent is contacted, the parent is now aware of what is going on in the classroom, and they have the opportunity to partner with the teacher to address those behaviors. By the time we get to the red, an office referral, all stakeholders have been engaged. We've got parent or guardian involved, we've got the teacher involved, we've got a scholar who has had an opportunity to stop and think about what he or she has done, reflect on what they've done. And now we're at the point where if he or she needs to come to the administration, we have all the information available to us. By the time they come to us, it is our expectation that our teachers have run through these steps so that when we have to make a decision, we're able to contact the parent and say, hey, listen, here's what's been done, here's what we are, and we can make an informed decision about what that consequence may look like. Next slide. And so what we are finding is that we are having the use of the progressive discipline chart is having a direct impact on the behaviors in our building. When you look at the data that's in front of you, we look at our 1st grade data, our branching mind referrals have gone down. They've decreased by a total of 52. We had 102 last year. We've had a total of 60 this year. 2nd grade, we've had a decrease of minus 23. 3rd grade, I'm going to come back to 3rd grade. 4th grade, we've had 350 referrals last year. We had 78 this year. That's a difference of 278 fewer. 5th grade, we had 288 referrals. We have 90 referrals. That is a difference of 198. When we look at our 3rd grade data, while our referrals for 3rd grade have gone up, we have to take into account of a number of factors. Number one, primary being, we have 180 3rd graders in our building compared to about 110 last year. So we have more students in that grade band. Additionally, this is the point where that frustration really, really sets in because we have gone from learning to read to reading to learn. And so we find that there's a little bit more frustration that sets in, and we have to be a bit more flexible as we deal with them. But again, overall, our referrals have gone down from last school year to this school year. In addition, our suspensions have decreased. We have gone from a total of 66 suspensions last year through this point. We have 55 this year. And these are actual decreases. We are seeing that our scholars are making better choices. They are engaging with us. We are allowing opportunities for them through the progressive discipline chart to have restorative experiences. And that allows them, rather than us sending them home, they have the opportunity to reflect on what has occurred, talk about it, and then get back to work and get back to that classroom. And it's having a direct impact on what we are doing in our building. Thank you.
Mr. Treasurer, can I
Ma'am.
ask a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you just clarify, define for me behavior referrals?
Yes, ma'am. So what happens, we have a system that is called Branching Minds. And that is where all of our teachers, it's part of our multi-tiered system of supports. And it is where our teachers can actually enter behavior referrals. So I'm in class and I'm tossing a pencil at the student in front of me. That teacher has an opportunity to write that referral up. And then that goes in, that data is collected, and that's where we get the referral. That's how we compile our referral data. Does that help? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other
I
questions?
have one quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
So when they start on Monday,
Yes, ma'am.
it's ready to learn, correct?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
when do they get to the point when you say like on Friday? They move from ready to learn, start to think, and then you say on Monday, on Friday they get to orange, correct?
Oh, no. What I was saying is that they get grace. Every day they start on ready to learn.
Okay, yeah.
And so I was using that as an example. So what I was saying is that if by the end of the day,
Uh-huh.
you're on orange,
Okay,
and I've had to contact your parent, you don't come in tomorrow and we start, okay, you're on orange. That's not how we're doing it. Everyone is getting that grace. We're starting over every day.
every day. Okay.
Every day we start over with the expectation that they're ready. Expectation. All right, thank you. Oh, I wanted to bring you this. So not only is that progressive discipline chart in our classrooms, we have some of our scholars, some of our teachers who actually carry this around with them. And so they'll clip up or clip down. So it's, Ms. Mullen, I see that you're not making great choices. Maybe I'll clip you down. You're in stop and think.
Mhm.
You've gotten it back together? Okay, let's put you back up here and ready to learn. So it's a fluid situation, but it's also something that not just in our classrooms, our teachers are actually walking around with this stick, and they are utilizing it as they travel through the building.
All right, thank you, Mr. Beck.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Stacy Shaw. I am one of 2 culture coaches in the elementary school building, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our PBIS. Each month, our students, going back to the branch of minds, can get referrals put in the system for their behavior when it is not, normal to what we're trying to do. We give them grace, so up to 3 referrals will put you in a situation where you don't get the incentive. Anyone with 3 or less, they get our incentive. As you can see from this picture here, we do plenty of things in our building, from dances. We have bouncy houses, popsicles, ice cream socials. The most famous one, I would say, would be our candy wagon. As you see here, we fill up a wagon full of candy. With the speaker, we run around the building with this wagon full of candy, and the children get to put their hands in the wagon and get the candy. And this is all just the fun part of things. Our kids are working hard in that building. And so because they're working hard and the behaviors are changing, we want to show them how much we appreciate their hard work. And so we do things like this with PBIS, and it's not a reward-based system. This is just for those who are doing the right things. And most often than not, our kids are doing the right thing. Next slide. Another thing that we're doing with PBIS and partnering with the educational piece is we have taken our words of the month and we have turned them into writing sheets. With the encouragement of my principal, I created these sheets every month with our word of the month with a little coloring on the bottom. The students can come to the office or from my office and they'll get these sheets. They will answer the question. For instance, self-discipline. Self-discipline means, then the students will write it in, and then they'll turn them in to me. I ask them to color them, turn them in, and when they turn them in, I give them a treat. I get these probably 15 to 20 a day. The kids are so encouraged to write, to show their writing. We put the writing all around the building. They love getting their treats and their bracelets, but at the same time, they're writing. They're doing what needs to be done in school while also learning about the positive behavior intervention system at the same time. Next slide. We're working on 2 tiers of PBIs in our building. We have our tier 1, which is all students. That is when we acknowledge their behaviors by modeling and teaching them throughout the day via class and personal, from class bucks, if the whole class is doing something well, to actual paw bucks for each individual student that they then turn in and they use at our paw mart. But if we have students who are not quite getting that tier 1 intervention, we skip them over to tier 2. And that's usually 1 adult, and we do small groups. There are probably 20 different groups in our buildings right now, and depending on the students, we split them up. We have things from the writing club. We have my group, which is like an E4 where we do a lot of journaling. Mr. Atkinson, our other culture coach, he has a superpower group that he takes the younger kids, and they work on their self-powers. And so we use our 2 tiers to identify students with the information and branch in minds, but also sometimes you just notice some students need a little extra push, and we can pull them out that way. Another thing that we're doing in our building, we're not just recognizing our students, we're recognizing the most important piece, which is our staff. So we have our staff recognition every 2 weeks, and what we do, we have QR codes all over our building, and so we just encourage the staff persons to acknowledge other staff persons, because it's not easy and people show up for our kids every day. And as you can see, these are two of our recipients recently. Miss Davis, our STEAM teacher, and then Coach Jay, one of our gym teachers. We give them pride notes. The kids get pride notes, and so do the teachers. They're nice and big, and we put them on their door. We get their picture, and then we shout them out all day, every day. Next slide.
So I put this kind of in the middle because a lot of times we do focus on the data because the data is important. But what we also need to know and understand at Warrensville Heights Elementary School, we are definitely handling our kids' needs so that they can focus on the academic. And what that looks like is that I do have a room in our building where I receive donations from different organizations for hats, for coats, for scarves, for gloves, for socks, for underclothes, for uniforms. I do have a laundry room there for incidentals. Things happen throughout the day. Parents are at work. We never want to have a child sitting in an accident, whether that's he or she using it on themselves or spilling milk in their lap or playing rough in the playground and got into something that they should not have gotten into that causes stains on their clothes. I think I may do more laundry at the elementary school than I do at my own home. What does that look like? If we come across an issue at breakfast, somebody spills some on their coat, I grab their coat, put it in the washing machine, hit my timer, get it in the dryer just to make sure that it is back with that scholar before the end of the day. And the reason why we do that is we recognize and understand that before they can focus on their academics and the challenges that they may have academically, we need to meet their emotional needs. We need to meet their confidence needs and those types of things. We have book bags, we have folders, we have supplies. So whatever it is that we can do to make our scholars comfortable in our building, we ensure that we do that. So NNI is what we kind of have been talking about throughout the presentation. And what is NNI? NNI is considered no new instruction, but there's also an enrichment piece to that as well. And so this concept came about a few years ago when we recognized that a lot of our kids needed some sense of an intervention. And so what we've also learned is that for the past few years, we've been trying to intervene our way out of a tier 1 issue. So now that we have a new tier 1 curriculum, we wanted to ensure that we use this no new instruction time to service our scholars and their needs. This year, it is very, very, very strategic, where our teachers are placing a focus 1 hour per day on exactly what the kids need based on their test scores. Right now, our current status, we are very blessed to have a group of teachers who we title the SWAT team. And those teachers go to grades 1, 2, 3, and 4, and they do daily intervention for kids who scored red. And so they look at those assessments that we talked about earlier, and they look at each skill deficit that student has. And we are using ODE approved tier 2 accommodate a tier 2 curriculum to address those needs. We also have a population of scholars who are green and yellow. So our teachers, classroom teachers, are working in small groups during that time with our scholars who scored in green and yellow. And then we have an enrichment opportunity. So we have our librarian, Ms. Hochberg, who is able to go to our 3rd and 4th grade and pull out students, and they are reading chapter books and they are working on more longer assignments that's going to enhance their comprehension because they are at grade level or above. And so I'll keep going. 1st grade, this is just a glimpse now you'll see of each grade level. 1st grade students engaged in our CKLA curriculum. They were working on the Big Bag of Coins book. Next slide. 2nd grade scholars, just giving you a glimpse of what's happening in our classrooms. We got 2 different teachers. One teacher was working on the Battle of Washington versus the Battle of Baltimore. They were reading aloud. Another teacher was working on and discussing the Fort McHenry, and they were making connections about the entrenchment. So pictures were up so that they can see and visualize what it is that they're working on. This is a 3rd grade classroom. I actually had the opportunity to walk right into this, and the students were engaged with real world to text for a deeper understanding. The teacher was teaching convex and concave mirrors, and she actually brought a spoon from home. And I never did this before, but if you look at one side of the spoon, you look at yourself on one side of the spoon versus the back of the spoon, you're going to see two different reflections. So I thought that was pretty cool to help the scholars make that real world to text connection. Fourth grade scholars are here proudly showing their work. Ayana. They had opinion writing. Which life would they pick? They were reading about the serfs, the monks, kings, or merchants. Scholars completed research about it. They wrote about it. They typed it out, and then they added a picture. Fifth grade, what you see here is some math intervention happening in the pod. A teacher working with a small group on math. They're learning the misconcepts and skills that they may have gaps in. And then math in the real world using place cards to work on problems and facts. So what now? Where do we go from here? Our focus is still to enhance student achievement by delivering that high quality instruction and promoting that active engagement in the classrooms. Together with our families and our staff, we're looking forward to creating an environment where every student is motivated and supported to reach their full potential. Next slide. So what are we doing? We're keeping our parents engaged and involved, providing those opportunities for parents to enter the building and learn how they may assist at home. We have a FAST program. I was going to have Coach Shaw come up, but for the sake of time, I'll just run through it real quick. It's an after-school program that we just started this year in connection with Cuyahoga County. It's families and schools together, and the purpose of it is to strengthen family relationships and increase cohesion, because, again, if that's happening at home, we're going to see that transfer over to the schools. We are engaging parents. And then the last piece is continuing the high quality professional development with our teachers, and then ensuring that our teachers have everything they need to be able to teach and work with our scholars. So, and definitely increasing those opportunities for our scholars to have books in hand and to read. And that is it. Do you have any questions?
Oh, sorry.
So I feel like a lot of information, a lot of good information. I feel like we answered this, but I'm gonna put it out there anyway.
Okay.
So I'm looking at this slide here.
Yes.
The one.
Okay,
Yes. So when you look at this data, I heard you guys say, I'm looking at the back end, it's 53.
Yeah.
So, but I still look at that data, and I have to wonder, what adjustments, if any, need to be made? Is it curriculum? Is it something about the way we're giving the instruction? We need additional support in some kind of way.
Yeah, so we have made the change of adopting the new curriculum, which is CKLA, and going through the motions of that. And that's a knowledge-based curriculum. So it is exposing our kids to a lot of different information. And so that's going to help in terms of when they are exposed to things like the OST. And when we say that we are building kids to go out and compete in the nation, our kids are learning about different wars. They're learning about different eras. It's way more rigorous than it ever has been. So it's providing them that opportunity to challenge a new text almost every day. So that's why I said in the beginning, if you miss a day, you miss a lot, because literally it's probably a new text every day with this curriculum, all about the same concept, but different texts, because that's what our test system looks like. You know, they take two different texts and they have to compare or answer questions. And so the second thing beyond the new curriculum is our no new instruction. So during that time, no teacher is teaching tier 1 instruction, because we do have a population of kids who are below grade level. We don't want them to get further behind. So at that time, for that 1 hour a day, the kids are getting exactly what they need based on those test results. And again, those test results, the test is one-on-one. And so again, it is a lot of red. It is. But when you open up the assessment and look at why they are red, it does give us a sense of relief that our kids have skills. Our kids are able to do some things. We just need to put everything together so that they're able to show what they really know when it comes to those types of assessments.
And I think that's what I was looking to hear, is that you guys have something in place to address those students that have the biggest need, and the fact that this is being done one-on-one is what's gonna help you guys, is what I'm hearing. Is that
Yep.
right?
And we have a whole team of licensed teachers who's working, 4 licensed teachers who are working in each grade level with each group. They're meeting constantly to talk about, this kid has surpassed my group. Let's move this kid to this group. So we are moving kids. We're not waiting to the end of the year to say, well, he stayed in this group the whole year. They're actually moving kids around based on the need.
One more question. What's the one thing that you're most proud of what's happened this year?
The hard work and perseverance of the staff and students. Adopting this new curriculum was not easy at all. Some people fought it. They didn't think it was a good idea, but now the teachers are really getting into it because the scholars are really getting into it. So everybody has kind of risen to the occasion to take on a challenge, because again, it is rigorous. And we have each classroom with 3 to 4 different levels in that classroom. So our staff not only have to learn the curriculum, they also have to apply those differentiated skills while they're teaching, so that they can address the needs of everybody in the room. So I'm proud of how we have came up against the challenge of this new curriculum and working through it.
It's a very nice presentation.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Thompson. Over the last 6 or 7 years, you've been doing a phenomenal job, and you keep doing it. Every time I look at your school, it's led properly. You do the proper thing for our scholars. I think Ms. Gator touched on it, but from all your years, what are you seeing as a challenge for you, just as a principal this year, that would be, like you said, Mr. Freeman, I think this is what I'm having challenges with. What is challenging you as a principal this year?
I would say one of the challenges are, well, 2 challenges I'm going to mention are out of our control. And that's what bothers me the most, because I like to figure out what we need and then handle it. Some of our student attendance is a true concern. Some of our families are experiencing issues that are beyond our control, and we try and make sure that when our kid is in a building, they feel good, they feel safe, they feel happy. We want to make school a fun place, because most times when we can get the kid engaged, then they'll be at home bugging their parents like, I really need to go to school. So we want to create that environment for our scholars, but attendance with some of our scholars, with a population of our scholars who are already performing below grade level, is one of those frustrations and challenges, because every time we get them pushed a little further, we run into an issue that we really can't solve. So that would be one of the challenges. And then the challenge that nobody can help with is time. My teachers tell me that all the time. We need more time. I know we do need more time, but that's one thing that we don't have. So
the only other question, you're looking at over 660 scholars in your building. Is that?
I'm over 700.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
No, you have a large population of scholars, and you're doing a great job. Just keep it up and keep leading like you lead. But I'm very proud of your building and you.
I appreciate it.
Ms. Fuller?
One question I did have was, when looking at the test scores, I saw that the reading, you had 627 out of 699. And math, there was 629 out of 699. What happened to the other students? Was that?
So sometimes, so what you see is our testing window.
Okay.
And so if we have scholars who are absent, then they still test, but they test out of the window.
Okay.
So their data won't be in. We do have a higher transient population. And so we have scholars who transfer out and transfer in. If they transfer in during the testing window, we got to get them tested, but we got to get the account set up. So those types of factors would contribute to those numbers.
Okay. Seems like you're doing a great job, and just keep up the good work. And like Mr. Jolly was saying earlier, you're presenting a foundation that should carry over to the middle school as well as to the high school. So thank you.
Well, I'm going to start off and just say I think you have an excellent team in place. And you are only as good as your staff.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that each one of your teachers are invested in our young people. And I always say my background is social work. And I just want the best for the children. the students. And I like the idea of washing their clothes. Because
That is
when
really
I had
nice.
a case once, and the child was whipped because of the fact that they came home with some dirty clothes. And the mom said, well, I can't go to the laundromat, and he knows that, blah, blah. But that was such, when I heard that, I said, oh, wow, that is fantastic to have that resource available for our young people. And you take the initiative to make sure that they go home the same way they came in. And that makes, I don't know, be honest, that makes a big deal. I think you have done a beautiful job, Ms. Thompson. I am so pleased with the outcome. Because I strongly believe that when they leave your school and go to sixth grade, they are going to be ready. And the foundation is to make them ready for when they go to sixth grade. And they shouldn't have any problem. I always say, you give them a good start, they'll be okay. And I believe they will be okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
I think there was a slide that even spoke to that. If you look at the fifth grade scores on that one.
Yeah,
sheet that I
Acadians.
showed you, yeah, it was only 24%.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
And Ms. Thompson, I would like to,
No, go ahead.
I would like to thank you and your staff, not only for the presentation, but the work that is obvious that you guys are doing. We can see that you have programs and processes in place that are not only going to make them good scholars, you're going to make those like good citizens. You're turning out good people. So we really appreciate and respect what you were doing. And also, while I was sitting here, I noticed that one of your lady football players, additional lady football players, showed up. So we would want to give you the opportunity to honor her while she's here. What is her name?
Georgia Cruz, come on up. And let's say that you do anything that you say.
Ms. Thompson, Jordan, take a picture with
Oh, Georgia, come back.
She real good too. She fast. She real fast.
Did you guys see one of the commercials in Super Bowl ads dealt with flag football and trying to promote the sport? Yeah, I saw that commercial.
I love that.
The female coach with Philly.
All right.
All right, next up, we have our high school principal, Miss Bishop.
Good evening, everyone, Tiger family. So this evening, as we begin the slide here, you're going to see, again, we do have our team actually here. 3 of our department chair were able to make it out of the 5. And so they're going to be coming up also giving some presentation here. Okay. So what we had to do, as you all know, this is my 2nd year. And they're passing out to you the actual slide that you're going to be looking at now. Okay.
All right, thank you.
So what you're seeing before you is our amazing high school team. We are truly rowing together. We started that whole theme off when I took over the high school. This is just a picture of us in our amazing building in the media center, and just showing the unity as a team. Okay, what you see on the right, a student last year was part of the, what do we call that? The graphic, he was in the graphic CTE program. Just gave him the challenge to, hey, I want our vision and mission posted. Come up with something. And that design that you see there is from him. He went on and graduated. But now what you can see actually not only in our building, but also in the elementary, in the middle, and in high school, we've passed those out. David has graciously had those all printed up for us. And they're in every classroom at the high school and throughout each one of the buildings. So everything stems from the vision and mission. It wasn't just a great slogan that the superintendent and the team, when he first got back here, came up with. And we actually picked that up and take it very seriously to make sure that not only do our staff know that, what's the vision, why we're here every day and what we're doing, but the students also. So at this time, I'm going to have Mr. Eatman and Ms. Peoples come up, and they're going to go over this slide.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hello.
So, as Ms. Bishop articulated, that everything centers on vision and mission, and that is the charge that we take personally with us when we talk about our BLT. So every month we have our BLT meetings in which we focus on whatever the district initiative is that we want to do, and we discuss how we're going to move our high school forward. Our BLT consists of more than just our department chairs. We make sure that we include members of our counseling department, our parent liaison, our paraprofessionals, all of those people that have a direct impact on our students, because again, all of the decisions don't rely solely in the classroom. In addition, we take that information and we make sure that we communicate it to our TBTs. So yes, we are the department chairs and we communicate it down, but at the same time, we have the reciprocal communication like, hey, what else are some things that maybe we aren't seeing that you're seeing in your classrooms that we need to focus on? That then goes to our staff who promotes our things such as our Tiger Targets. What the Tiger Targets are the things including the standards and what students will be able to get out of each and every lesson. It's not as though you just come into a classroom and you have no idea what's going on. All of the Tiger Targets are posted in a place in which anybody who's walking through can come and see what exactly kids are working on where we are. That also includes the use of our pride posters. You may have seen as you've walked through our building, pride posters that are specific not only to the classroom, but different areas of the school, which include the hallways, the library, and things of that nature. And what I found that was very interesting is that at our Warrensville Heights Library, they actually have the pride posters there too. So it's showing that, hey, just because you're out of school doesn't mean that you don't carry that pride with you. And then the last thing that we have is, of course, our onboarding. Superintendent Jolly has made a concerted effort to make sure that we are retaining the staff. And we spoke about that a little bit last year and at the beginning of this year. We have members of our onboarding team who are paired with our new hires, and they go specifically to deal with them. So there's a one-on-one connection as well as a larger connection. And with the onboarding team, again, we've tried to focus on what's going on. We have our evaluations coming up. How can we help you? Are you preparing your lessons well? What are the challenges that you're facing? And try to answer those questions so that we are retaining those good staff members. In kind, those staff members then become additional resources, if you will, for those the next year. So we had an onboarding last year. Those people kind of helped out with us this year. And then those this year, hopefully we have fewer. And because we're retaining everybody, they will then stay on and help with the next group.
Okay, and then with our students, it is very important to us to keep our students involved in the culture also. So what we do is Students of the Month, and we sift it through our PBIS program. So we select students based off of grades. Sometimes it's just based off of behavior. Sometimes it's based off of improvements. And we select certain number of students for each grade. And then those students are put on a bulletin board and they're celebrated for the month. They receive a PBIS t-shirt. We have PBIS swag such as book bags, jogging pants. So they receive those things and we just highlight those students every month. We also do assemblies. And the assemblies are based on academics and sometimes just extracurricular activities. With the academics, we call in our advisors for each grade level, and they help spearhead those assemblies. So for example, I'm a 10th grade advisor. Our assemblies are about OST because in the 10th grade, you take OST tests.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the academic piece. Okay, so here again, we're just showing a couple of pictures of the foundations of success. As you see on the left, that's a classroom. You see the Tiger Targets. Every classroom has that as well. And you see the vision and mission poster there. We have encouraged every teacher to begin each lesson reciting that vision and mission. That helps them and the students to stay focused. On the right, you'll see, actually, I believe that's Ms. Posey's classroom. English too. And this is what you'll see when you go in. Teachers are prepared. They have what the targets are. They have, what they need to do, the students need to do, and what the homework is. Okay. All right, so let's get to the benchmark data and trends. So I'm going to have both Ms. Posey, who is our ELA department chair, and Ms. Riley. They're both ELA 2 teachers. As Ms. Peoples stated, 10th grade takes 4 OST tests, more than any other grade, right? 9th grade, they take Algebra 1. 10th grade, they take biology, geometry, English 2, and history. So our 10th graders are loaded with 4 OST tests. All right. And so we wanted to bring them both up. Come on, Miss Riley and Miss Posey. Last year, we didn't make, I would have bet the family farm we would have hit that target for ELA. 2, we did not. And so we really have been very strategic this year with making sure that we hit that target this year and we go beyond just that 7%. We're going for the stretch goals. Okay.
Good evening. I'm Miss Posey, and I do teach English Language Arts, 10th grade.
Hi, I'm Miss Riley. I teach 10th grade as well. I do teach 9th too, but mostly 10th graders.
And speaking of being intentional, we have done several very specific things in the areas of planning, environment, instruction, and reflection to ensure that the students are growing. One of those things is that for planning, we're very intentional. We want to make sure that we use that most current data that drives the instruction for the scholars so that we can look at a customized way of examining the specific skills. For example, craft and structure. So when the students are writing, they need to know exactly what that 5-paragraph format or structure looks like. And they need to know the different steps to get there. So that's one of the things that we are doing. Also, we are targeting specific scholars with very specific needs during specific times of the day. We're able to do that through TBT, so our teacher-based team meetings where we examine the data and we talk about the glows and the grows and growing all of our students forward with the intensive focus on the students that are right there at the borderline, and we want to grow them forward, and we know that we can get them there with some intensive intervention. Some of those interventions take place during their lunch period. So what we do is I don't have the lanyard with me, but okay. So I'm moving forward a little quickly. But they do see the white lanyard, which indicates that they are able to go ahead and grab their lunch and then head to their specific area. One of the highlights of that is that the students are able to get that intentional instruction that's targeted for their specific needs in small numbers. So we're able to really focus on, let's say, 3 students. Sometimes we can focus on 10 students. And so within those student groups, we're able to focus on very specific skills to help them to grow forward.
So I just want to add, with that OST intervention that we're able to do, it's been really nice to use that additional time. So I appreciate the flexibility of the whole team coming together. I'm actually able to pull my students from an elective class and get a good 45, 50 minutes of extra instruction with them. And I'm able to use that scope and sequence, look at exactly what standards our students are weakest in, and also kind of compare that with the BI report of like, what standards are they going to be most highly assessed on that OST test as well. So that when I'm planning that instruction, I'm looking at how should I really sequence these standards. So for example, it makes the most sense to look at author's purpose and perspective, how they're using rhetoric before I go into how that text is structured. So making sure that when we're using those interventions, we're also like planning the standards out strategically. And then we can even move into things like our literary standards, how they're analyzing different themes across multiple texts, and how they're able to even do an extra writing piece that is able to compare and synthesize those sources. So with that additional time, it just allows me to specifically intervene what each kid really needs, make sure that they are getting that access. It includes extra explicit vocabulary instruction, mini lessons that target that standard with clear key steps of how they can actually apply that standard, as well as some like guiding questions that they can use to help them improve overall. And it's been going great so far. There's been great attendance and they're motivated. I think it also helps that we're trying to choose texts that they're going to really enjoy and want to engage with, because some of my kids I'm seeing for 3, ELA classes that day on a Tuesday.
They love us.
They do, they do. So what are we doing though to make sure that when I'm pulling them in, choosing the best text that I can, that it applies to them in some way. This week we did something about like the overall use of trash across the world, how much food is wasted, and then it even looked at like how much schools are wasting, what schools can do for composting. So things that they would find interesting, and I love when they come back and they're like, we just talked about that. So it's sticking and they're able to apply the skills and learn about new content as well.
Thank you.
All right, yeah.
So we're back. As the chair of the Department of Exceptional Children, I'm pleased that you can start to see that our students with exceptionalities are starting to progress and move. We've gotten to a habit in which we had students that were just sitting and not really moving, and that affects us in 3 different ways. And so because of that, we wanted to make sure that we're doing those interventions, whether it be a pull-out, one-on-one sessions, or as those that have been mentioned by Ms. Posey, that those kids really get those targeted skills. Many of our exceptional scholars are especially deficient in reading. And so that is where Ms. Peoples kind of helps out with that. And we saw that we grew at least 15% from the Q2 benchmarks. Ms. Peoples?
So I'm the reading intervention teacher at the high school. Prior to this, I taught kindergarten. So I know all the foundational skills that students need. So I see students who don't necessarily qualify for an IEP, but still need that support. I do small group instruction 5 days a week. And these students were hand selected by myself and Ms. Thornton to be in my class. So the students that are in reading intervention get that support 5 days a week, specifically on the skills that they need. We've been working through a program, and currently we are on comprehension, which will help them with the OST testing. Right now I see 9th graders, but as a team, if we identify students who also need intervention and it fits their schedule, they sift into my classroom or into a period. All right, and then so we'll move right into science. On the benchmark, science is showing improvement also. On their first test, they had 13% of the students who were in the limited area, but on the second test that they've taken, they now only have a small portion, and 21% of those students moved over to other categories.
So think about it in terms of an analogy. It's not that they're just moving up from limited to basic. Some of these scholars are actually progressing from even basic to proficient, proficient to advanced and accelerated. And that's what we want to see. That we're seeing that the focus, the specific laser-like focus on those standards in which kids are struggling on is helping them to move beyond what we've been testing on, and then they'll do better on the tests themselves of the OST test. So Matt, with Ms. Hamilton and Ms. Harrison.
Hi, good evening. How are you guys today?
Hi.
I'm Mrs. Hamilton and Ms. Harrison. But so we're both Algebra 1 teachers at the high school. Our benchmark data showed that we had a little bit lower scores from last year's kids, but again, these are different kids. But we have a lot of things in place right now that are helping our students grow. So we have pullouts that are happening at least once a week, that we're taking them from their electives and bringing them to our classes during our planning periods and giving them actual intervention, more one-on-one. There's about 10 kids that a lot more one-on-one instruction is happening there. From the very beginning of the year, I've done after-school tutoring from 3 to 3:45 every single day. So whenever a student needs it, I am there after school. Yes. Sorry, I should say we. I'm saying we. Also, we're pulling other kids during lunch times, at least once a week, sometimes twice a week as well. So that's only 25 minutes, but it's still giving them some time to come back, ask some questions about some content. And then also my honors pre-cal kids have been coming into the algebra classes from the beginning of the year to help tutor the kids as they're doing their own work. And so if they have extra questions, their class is larger, they're able to get more attention, because there's me plus maybe 1 or 2 other students, and then Ms. Harrison when I have her for 2 of the periods as well. Not to mention we have algebra class 2 periods a day. So they're getting 100 minutes a day of algebra. So we have that coded as algebra and then math intervention. So they're getting that extra help that they need, as Mr. Jolly said, to help fill in those gaps. So I do want to say that even though our scores are a little bit lower, they were 8% for that were say above proficiency in this and 14% last year. We got the kids to about 50% proficient last year on the state test, and over 70% with their graduation requirement in Algebra 1. So I am confident that these will be a lot better as the year goes on, because the questions that I pick for the benchmark are very rigorous. I hold the kids to very high standards. I make sure the kids are learning the most they possibly can, and I hold them accountable for every single thing. So these scores might not look the best for you, but I promise they are learning a lot in these classrooms.
And for me, I'm an intervention specialist, so I do have self-contained classes as well. So I have a thing called Rewind Wednesdays or Throwback Thursdays, and that's to work with the students on the foundational skills that they are lacking. Because for the students with exceptionality, that's one of the biggest issues with them, is they don't have the foundation. So like Superintendent Johnny spoke about earlier, when you have a cracked foundation, it's hard to keep building on top of it. So I have to go back in and kind of fill those gaps to build a stronger foundation for them so that they can understand the concepts, the newer concepts that are still being taught to them today.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Exceptional children. My first thought was gifted, but then something that someone said made me think otherwise. So what are we talking?
So we no longer use special ed. That's just not a term that's politically correct now. So students of exceptionalities, am I saying that right? Students of exceptionality. So yeah, you would think, oh, you're exceptional. That means you must be right. But
Gifted is
never
that
right. But never forget though, even on the special ed spectrum, it does include gifted.
Mm-hmm.
It just is on one
One
spectrum
side of
or the other. So even a student that is considered gifted, our students that are at the elementary, they have not what's called an IEP, but a web, which means, yes. So they have individually designed instruction as well. So oftentimes people don't realize that, but if you're on that spectrum, it could be on either end. Okay? Yep. Okay. Yep.
Geometry.
I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
All right. So, as we remember, geometry was our lowest a year ago. They did improve last year, and they did meet the 7%, the district goal. This year we have, and I would also welcome for you all to come and see our situation room. In the situation room, it is every single subject, every single student is listed in that room. Where they're at, whether they're green, meaning pretty much they're going to pass. We know that based on their OST from the previous year, or whether they're in yellow, like if we just give that intervention, they're pretty much going to pass. Or our students who are like, we're on the move. So our exceptional students, they're listed there as well, because on the state report card, we don't do well with moving special ed students or students with exceptionalities. I got to get used to using that word term too. And so that is why Ms. Harrison and Mr. Eatman also just stated, when you look at for right now, they're growing. Before they were flatlined. Went all the way back from maybe when they were in 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, they flatlined on the ST. They remained limited. There was no growth, even from limited to basic. So our goal this year is to at least see a movement. Like for those students, they have to at least move from limited to basic. And that's the goal that we're striving for. And so being intentional with those students just as well. Geometry itself, right now, what we have in the situation room, we are on the track. We're on the track to be able to meet our stretch goal. We do have students that are in geometry, honors geometry. They're performing, they're going to perform. I mean, that's just where that's at. I'm going to leave geometry there for right now, okay? We did algebra. Social studies, if you look, and you can go on to the next slide. So if you look at social studies, government and history, they're doing pretty well. And when I say pretty well, what do I mean by that? They have more students now in that proficient and above, and as you can see, even advanced, where we weren't seeing this type of data in the past. U.S. history as well, they are very intentional. We have progress monitoring every week. So when we come together on Wednesdays for our data meetings, each teacher has to give where each one of their students is at. They have to be able to speak to, where's Keith Fuller at right now? Is he doing well? Is he still doing well? Is he not doing well? What about Ray Freeman? They have to speak to those individual students. So we've drilled down not just to one subject or just all the subjects. We've drilled down to each individual student, because that's the only way we're going to be able to move them, right? Is for us to keep our eyes on all of them. So government and history is doing pretty well now. When I say pretty well, we know that 50%, unless you're talking about $1 million, is not enough. It's just not enough. We have to be able to break that barrier to get past 50%. Yes, we're growing, but we got to get past that 50% of proficient and above. And that's why we're being so intentional. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So just the benchmark summary. I think you two were going to do this. All right, so the most effective strategy. So the high quality tier 1 lesson and delivery, design and delivery. We got the situation room there, weekly TBTs, grade level planning meetings, one-on-one data chats, and myself and the administrative team as well. When we see students and we talk about these different students in these meetings, I've pulled students down to my office. Like, I see that you're slipping. Tell me what's going on, right? Just having a conversation with them so they know, wow, I'm really being seen. The principal knows that I'm not doing too well. And we try to make sure that we feel whatever that is. We have Miss Farmer, who is our parent liaison, who really helps students. Same thing like what Ms. Thompson was talking about. Even high school kids, some of them don't have clothes. Mm-hmm. Some of them, things are going on in the home. Some of them, they have to leave their home in the middle of the night. So we have to work around all those challenges. But that's why this is so important. I do want to say that I really appreciate HR and Ms. Thornton's department. We hired Ms. Howard, who comes and is now doing work samples, best practices with our ELA team. They have meetings after school, and they're actually planning together. I think she works also with our 10th grade team very closely to really see where is it at. Sometimes we, unfortunately in education, there can be fluff. It just looks real pretty, but that's it. What we want to do is get rid of the fluff and really get down to what is it they actually need. You do need the fun things, but you also have to really be focused on what it is that they need. What we see is our areas of refinement and concern. Math continues to be our biggest challenge. It just does. It's great to hear Ms. Thompson say, that, and Ms. Shaw, that they're doing the fact families. That's one of the things our algebra teachers talk about. Very difficult when a kid doesn't have the foundation in math, because it builds upon any previous grade. That continues to be our biggest challenge. But the action steps are, teachers are taking a closer look at how the delivery of the content is being taught. I think that was a question that you asked earlier. So is it the curriculum? Is it how it's being taught? So we're looking at that. How is it being taught? What are some ways that students actually learn better? Not every student can learn sitting down in a chair in rows. We really don't promote the whole row thing. We do promote students sitting in clusters and working in that way. In addition, scholars, they receive that intervention time, and on one of the next slides, you'll see what it is that we're doing for the interventions. But I want to say, we started this year off already intervening. We didn't wait till January or now. We already planned this at the end of last year, that we were going to start earlier. So, and the teachers actually said that. We want to do this in September, not waiting till January, like right before the OST, and cram for it. So we've been intentional with that from the very beginning. It says, in additional teachers will increase the student engagement. One of the things we found last year for the OST was just having hot breakfast. That made our attendance went up during hot breakfast, because they knew, oh, I'm coming and get bacon and eggs and grits. I mean, literally, the cafeteria team really put some great things together, and students were coming with that. We do have Saturday school intervention as well, and that's a part of something that Ms. Thornton's team actually put together. And then I'm going to let Miss Bowie come up. She's part of the ROAR. Actually, she is the ROAR team, her and Mr. Thompson. And that's a huge piece to the graduation rate that the high school has been experiencing. So she's going to come up and share a little bit.
Good evening. I'm Anissa Bowie. I'm an intervention specialist at the high school. I've been with the district for 6 years now. My first year was at Westwood and 5 years at the high school. So the first year of the ROAR program, I was actually privileged to get it up and running. And 5 years later, we have successfully helped the graduation rate increase, and also with the college and career readiness, because the students who come through the program that are credit deficient, majority of the times don't even know what a plan is going to be after high school, because they couldn't even see the end of the road through high school. So that way we were, along with the Jobs of Ohio Graduates program that the district kind of adopted the program to help scholars with their competency scores, and it's a pathway is what it is. So it helps them earn a credit of an elective. It also is kind of like that plan B in case they don't meet those competency scores for their OST. It's a very important program because it teaches them life skills. So for instance, just yesterday they had a mock interview where the instructor of the program actually had hiring managers at organizations like University Hospital, Lincoln Electric, and the students came in dressed as if they were going on an interview, and they were able to get that experience on how to answer questions appropriately and make themselves, competitive and possibly get hired. So with ROAR, with them earning their credits, getting back on track to be able to graduate on time, and the JOG program are two ways that our scholars graduate successfully and have a plan after high school.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So throughout this presentation, you've heard us talk about what we're doing with that benchmark data. And Ms. Posey alluded to it a little bit earlier when she talked about our lunch bunch thing idea and using our TBT time or what have you, planning period times, in order to do that. So what we came up with is Operation OST and our Strive for 5. So from the benchmark data, we really looked at and identified the scholars that needed that additional intervention over a particular content area. So let's say for English, it can be standard RL 9-10.4 or Ms. Posey, that is stuff. There you go. So see, she can recite them off the thing. But these are the standards in which we looked at. From there, the teachers pulled the selected scholars on particular days. Now, Ms. Bishop also spoke about that sophomores take 4 tests, and everybody would try to compete on the same day. Like, oh, I want to take Mr. Freeman out on Mondays, but wait a second. Ms. Roberts wanted Mr. Freeman on Mondays for his science and things of that nature. So what we decided to do was to create specific content days in which those scholars can receive those interventions. So as you can see there, Mondays is social studies, ELA on Tuesdays, science occurs on Wednesdays, math is on Thursdays, and then we are also continuing with the no new instruction on Fridays to make sure we're wrapping it back around to what we're doing. All of the students were given the ID badges that they wear to their transition.
And the ID badges just help our security know that these are students that are receiving intervention and they are allowed to transition through the halls, because they'll transition during times that aren't always normal. What we also did was we created a attendance chart. So every time a teacher sees a student, they are marking whether they came or they did not. We have 34 days of intervention. So we will be able to tell if Mr. Jolly came all 34 days and received that intervention, or if attendance was also a barrier during that time. The students have been spoken to by each of their teachers, so they know what day, what time, what location interventions happen. And the students are excited to do this because now they're like their own little club of students. Each intervention only includes up to 6 students. With interventions, if you have more than 6, it's not really an intervention. We want it to be more one-on-one with the students so that we can work on their needs. So we started this about 2 weeks ago, and it'll go all the way until OST starts.
Thank you, you too. So last year, and I have to say was my oversight, I didn't realize, I kept looking at our attendance for the high school, and it was high, 93, 94%. However, on the state report card, they look at chronic absenteeism, not necessarily that you're at 93%. We missed that. We didn't get that. We didn't earn that. And so that really put up big red flags for our team. What you're seeing now is the data for that. And I'm going to have Mr. Alexander, who was our attendance person, and Mr. Perry, one of the assistant principals, who came up with how we were going to actually deal with attendance at the high school.
If we can get them there, they can learn. Good evening. I'm Mr. Lawrence Perry. I'm one of the assistant principals, and got Mr. Alexander. But what I want to do is give credit to Mr. Alexander because this is my 3rd year. He's been a mentor to me. He's been my 4th year, and he's been saying we need to have Saturday. It's some different accountability pieces that we needed to put in place. And I was trying to do some things by myself last year, and you cannot do it on the island alone. But he's every year has come to me like Mr. Perry. We have to get it in place. So this year, when he came to me at the end of last year, I said, Mr. Alexander, I've been bumping my head. I'm ready. Let's put some things in place so we can kind of hold people accountable. Because even though we can't control going to their houses and getting them here, there's some things we can do on our end to hold them accountable. So we've been in a tandem, and I've had a fantastic team between Ms. Alexander. We've been using Ms. Nia Davis, Ms. Carstarper, Ms. Blanchard, Ms. Griffin, Ms. Farmer, and Ms. Henderson to kind of hone in on putting some systems in place. And I think this year, if you look at some of the data, and I'm going to have Mr. Alexander go because he's really helped me out. And so we can talk about how we got some of those numbers down and the systems we put in place that probably has been in the school in years past, but that we kind of instituted back that we've been doing all year. And I think it'll only get better even next school year as we've been doing. So I'm going to let him speak also.
They call me the old timer, but it doesn't make a difference. I firmly believe that every child can learn. But most importantly, to the board members and to Mr. Jolly, one of the things that I've always believed that if we can get them there, they can learn. Who am I? Some looked at me before when I was first hired to the district as a residential officer, the attendance officer, truancy officer, but I work across the spectrum for the entire district. I work with pupil services, and I work with, most importantly, the families and the household. I could talk about our after-school and Saturday school program, or I could talk about the implementation of our new workflow program that you see in all the buildings, which hopefully will make sure that our students are in school every day. Now, how do you do this? Very briefly before I get to the chart. One of the things we do, we call the parents. We send out letters to the parents every week of their sons and daughters' attendance, whether it be excessive absence or whether it be truancy. Now, the most important thing is that we had no other choice because House Bill 410 said that we had to do this. So now we're talking about chronic absenteeism. For those of you who don't know, chronic absenteeism is any child who misses more than 10% of the given number of days available to for that particular school year. For example, so if there are 90 days we have come through so far, the child could not have missed no more than 9 days. So let's look at the data that we have before us. Before we talk about chronic, let's look at the suspensions. Last year we had 301 suspensions, and we're talking 23, 24. But look at what has happened for the 24-25 school year up until January of this year. That number has decreased over 44%. And you may say, how were you able to accomplish that? We were able to do it several ways. But most importantly, we had put in place last year a policy whereby those scholars who violated school policy, there was a consequence. But we felt to some degree that that was a little too harsh. So we reduced it this year. So for that reason, we've seen a huge decrease in the number of the scholars that have been suspended for this school year. Now let's talk about chronic absenteeism, which is one of the things that they're looking at the local level, the the state level and the federal level. In 23-24, we had 358 scholars who were considered chronically absent. But that was 55% of the total population for the high school. But look at now for 24-25. We only have 241. That's a decrease of 33% of those scholars who are now no longer considered chronically absent. I think we have to give credit where credit is due for those that were chronically absent. We have to give credit where credit is due for those who were considered, who were suspended. I give credit to the entire high school team. I give credit to Mr. Jolly and you for purchasing the software that helped us to save the board money. Okay, because we would have had to hire, or you would have had to hire 4 or 5 additional people to man these stations, but we put in place software that now, instead of having the security team constantly write tardies when a kid is late to class, they simply go and put in their code and it automatically gives them their ticket to class, so to speak. But the most important thing that we need to work on, I think, at the high school, and we will continue to work on, is making sure that our scholars are there. And one of the things I think in the future we need to do is develop a better way of communicating with the parents, letting them know the importance of education. Like I said, I'm from the old school. And hey, we need to get them there. If we get them there, they will learn. Even if it's through osmosis or diffusion, they will learn as long as we get them there.
And just real quick, so what we've done real quickly, so Tuesdays and Thursdays we have after school detentions from 3 to 4. So that's one of the things we put in place. So real quickly, the after school detentions come from lockouts. So we have lockouts every single period. We have these carbon copies that are given to our security on each floor. I carry them, and if they are late to class, they get a lockout. One of our building sub, Ms. Karstark, we have a Google form. She puts it in there every single week, and we look at it. So if you get 2 in a week, you're going to get a detention. So we also use detention for other things also. So that is, when you look at some of the numbers, we're also using Saturday. So Saturday school is twice a month. So Saturday school, we want to hit them when they're late to school. That's where we get the bulk of our Saturday school. We do it twice a month, probably every other week. And what we do is we have a team of people who are tallying it. So he puts a report out every day or like every week. And we look at the threshold. And the one that was board approved, we have sent it to families. And we look at the numbers and where you're at. And we have a team that we've met and we have put together that everybody has a letter and they call the parents, they email the parents. So we use the Saturday schools even not just for attendance, but for other things. They don't want to come to Saturday school, so we can use that to keep them in school. So those numbers are because we're using other methods to keep them in school. And it's just been a great team of calling the parents, and the kids see because they're not, you got to think, I'm going to be honest, the years prior to that, since I've been there, we weren't doing it. Now they're like, man, we stay on it every single week, every single day, and they know that. So that's been a testament to just a really good team working together to keep them in school, so that's basically it. But I have a really good team, and I appreciate Mr. Alexander, but the people that I named that was working for us, they're relentless in helping us out. So it's been pretty good. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? So is there a certain group of students that we find are, being suspended more chronic absentee in 10th grade, 11th grade, boys, girls? Do we have data that kind of drills down that deep, or do we not look at it from that perspective?
The data is available. It's not on this chart, but I can provide that to the board.
Okay. I'm curious to see.
One of the things that I found that there's a lot of repeaters.
Yes.
Yeah.
A lot of repeaters. Those that are suspended, I would say that many of them are repeaters.
You'll probably find that most of those students are not engaged in any activities in school too. Because kids who are engaged come to school because they want to be part of something. So that's one of the goals, and I don't know if it's one of her slides, but to have 100% engagement. Because data tells you once kids are engaged, they come to school. They feel like they're missing something or something of value to them is there, they come, regardless of the circumstances. So when people don't feel connected, that's when they don't come. And then you have those special situations of family discord and all of those things that happen. But I know from experience with working here, you have teachers that go bring people to school. I know Miss Hamilton was doing that years. The team picks up where sometimes where the families might fall short. But again, those are kids who are engaged and want to be part of something. But we have pulling data because I guarantee you the majority of the kids that's absent or getting suspended are ones that's not on a team or in a club or um, they're not actively engaged in something. And they have 100 clubs, 100 teams. So it's always an opportunity to be involved, but it's just getting kids to be involved.
Yeah, and if you have a pretty good idea that that's what's going on, then I would think the next thing would be to figure out a plan to get them engaged in some kind of way.
But sometimes and then you get people that transfer in with bad habits too. I mean, that's a lot of the case. You get people transfer in with real bad habits or trying to get them involved. Our high school is a 4-star high school, so people want to come. But just because their parent want them there don't mean they want to be there and then become part of the culture of the school.
Yeah, so
All right,
then
thank you.
quickly, just to go to that point, superintendent, last year when we first got there, talked about student engagement. Every kid should be involved in something. We actually have photos to where we called all the kids. We had a big school assembly, called them all down. Who's involved in something? Basketball, football, volleyball. Now we have girls tackle, all of those things. And we still had a good portion that was still sitting. This year, we did the same thing, and we have more than what we had the last time. More kids are being involved. So yeah, I mean, we have things. All of our coaches do recruiting. Superintendent does recruiting. Our team does recruiting. Everybody's recruiting all the time. You know, if we see some, what are you involved in? What is it you do? Are you in the band? Are you in soccer? So we do a lot of that. The biggest thing is, I think, the exposure. That and the students seeing us at those games, seeing the team, no matter where they go, if they're traveling, we're there. And that makes a big difference. We're going to move on for the sake of time. Can you go to the next slide? All right. So we're going to start off with the PBIS, and that is headed by Ms. Dyson, our assistant principal. Good evening. My back hurt. Good evening. So I want to talk a little bit about our PBIS program at the high school. So I will say our PBIS program played also a major part in the decrease of suspensions that Mr. Perry that Mr. Perry was talking about before us. And I would like to lead off by saying that we did win the bronze award for the 23-24 school year last year. And that was in part because of our amazing PBIS team. We have an amazing team at the high school who have stepped up and taken charge of all of our PBIS programs that we'll see in the slides to help with all of our tier 1 supports. And that includes like tier 1 lessons within the classroom. We also, like Ms. People said, we have grade assemblies, and some of those assemblies are also expectation assemblies. If we see certain grade levels who may need more expectations assemblies than the others, we also have those to kind of keep them on track. We also do PBIS announcements every day or every week with Mr. Perry. We also have PBIS Students of the Month. We also have Teachers of the Month. And so, again, here's some Students of the Month. We also have Teachers of the Month on the same board. We also have a section in our school in the kind of the main hallway where you see right here where it says Pride, where students know when they get those slips from those teachers, they have to then put their slips into the slot right there, and then Ms. Farmer retrieves those slips, and then she enters them into a worksheet. A spreadsheet where we kind of keep tally of who has the PBIS prize slips, because depending on who has them, you have to have a certain amount of prize slips in order to go to our monthly events that we have for PBIS. And then
Another strategy that we use to address PBIS is our, Ms. Henderson is going to explain what we have, our third strategy.
Hi, I'm Ms. Henderson. Thank you. I run the redirection room, which is normally called the in-school suspension room. But when thinking about that, it's not always a punishment. It's trying to find out what the problem is and to redirect our scholars back into the classroom. So along with that, Ms. Dyson supplied me at the beginning of the year with the restorative check-in sheet, which was initially created for those scholars that were suspended. When they came back from suspension several times, we will put them on a contract. But what I found was that there were some kids that I was seeing quite frequently that were late to class, lockouts, just not doing the right things in class. And so I took it upon myself with some of the recommendations of the teachers to put some of the scholars on the contracts. They come to me daily, they pick up a folder at the beginning of the week that has 5 contracts in it. When they enter the classroom, they're to give the sheet to the teacher. And at the end of the period, the teachers will complete it. This allows the scholars the opportunity to see what they're doing, and it holds them accountable. They know that I expect for them to be where they need to be on time. I look at the tardies, I look at the attendance. They get a grade. I have 10 scholars currently that are on the contract. 7 are 10th graders, which is important because they are going to be testing. The other 3 are 9th graders. I have one young lady that has gone from extreme behavior to getting A's. And when she sees her sheet with a D or a F on it, she's concerned and she's wrapped around. So I know that it works. It also gives the kids the opportunity to check in with someone one-on-one. I talk to them every day about what's on the sheet and what we can do to improve it. So it is a tool that does work. And it allows the scholars to have a one-on-one relationship with somebody that can kind of support them as well.
And I would like to add that some of those students who are on those restorative contracts were some of the students who had the repeat suspensions, and they have gone to now not being suspended. So it's actually working.
Any questions?
Okay, so this is one of our PBIS incentives, actually 2. This first one over here to the left was in the month of October, and the PBIS team created gift bags for all of these students that you see in the picture, 119 students, and they were actually rewarded with a movie. On the right, we went to Scene 75. We took 100 students to Scene 75. So this is some more pictures of Scene 75. Right here on the left, we were kind of getting instructions on how to play the play cards and so forth. And on the right, you see that some students were gearing up to go-kart race. So for the month of January, we had rewarded students with light snacks and afternoon games. It was actually 188 students who were able to receive this incentive for January. And so for this month, on the 27th of November, we are taking 140 students to skate, United Skates of America. That would be, the 27th of February, I'm sorry. So this is some of our PBIS swag. We have the Tiger shirts. So these shirts on the left, we give to students and staff who win Students of the Month and Staff of the Month. And then on the right, we have our PBIS swag bag.
All right. And I want to add, this was the first year, I had to double check before I said this. This is the first year the high school ever earned any award from the state for PBIS. This was the first, and we earned the bronze. So thank you all for that. Yeah. So I think that was the end of it. We did kind of move forward from one of the slides, but any questions or wonders that anyone has at this time?
Go say more.
Okay. I'm going to start off with the very first slide that you presented.
Okay.
And I just want to say kudos to you because I don't think that enough attention is given to the fact that how important culture is to the school community. Because if the culture is right, then you see academic educational outcomes improving. You see what all the benefits of PBIS. So I just wanted to say thank you for highlighting that. I mean, the only thing that was missing for me was curriculum engagement. Farmer, right. But I would think that what she does also plays a role
Yes.
too, yeah.
Right.
So that was really good that you started out like that. So I think the questions that I was gonna ask, you answered. I was gonna give you the same question about, what kind of adjustments needed to be made. You talked about the fact that interventions are targeted. Honestly, I really don't have questions. I want to give one more shout out to your staff, because what I heard from the math teachers and honestly from English too, is that they're using their planning time to help students and going the extra mile. So all of that's going to play out, even though, I personally see, that 58% or whatever it is, the lower number. I feel that you have a staff that's dedicated to helping us to improve and to move that far. We're only halfway there, so we still have a lot of time to get better. So I just want to say kudos to all of you.
Right.
All
Thank you.
middle school, high school, and elementary.
Right.
Thank you.
Yep.
I want to thank you, Ms. Bishop. I see the culture change, as my colleague said. The leader lead. You're a leader, so you're leading it, and they know what you expect. And I think it changes the whole dynamic of that school, because for years, as long as I've been here, we've always had a different person in there, but it wasn't a person that took actual. You've take ownership of that building, and that's what you need to do as a principal and as a leader in anything you do. And I just want to give you kudos and your staff, but keep leading.
One question I have is, high school is the last level before these kids get out into the real world, and there's so many things going on emotionally. Do you find an issue with some of our scholars' mental health? And do you have a plan, or do you have a way to assess that or to even recognize it?
So for sure, we do. And I have to say, I think as we all know in the Black community, we don't usually talk about,
Exactly.
we don't talk about what's going on, right?
Right.
We're not used to having counseling or what have you. The district now actually has put in place something called Handle with Care. So what that is, when we see a student that's struggling, whatever it may be, Ms. Farmer will send out a notice to the entire staff which says, Handle with Care, Andrea Bishop. We don't say what the kid is going through because they don't want people knowing. We don't tell them, and the staff has actually been trained in, you don't go and say, hey, what's going on? Why? You don't do that. You just know that, add a little grace, handle her with care today. We do have Heart to Heart that is on campus. They do have their own office there. The referrals are made to them. And we do have a lot of parents that take advantage of that, because now I don't have to make a separate appointment for my student. They can pull them out during lunch. They can pull them out during one of their electives and have the conversations with them. So we definitely see it. Yeah, and we also have what's called Securely. The district has implemented, or actually have a program that all the administrators get an alert when a student does any type of questionable Google searches. So immediately it comes up. 5 o'clock in the morning one time, one came across to me, and as soon as I thought it was feasible, because the team will say that I'm up all times of night, but I did call that parent, said, hey, were you aware that such and such at 5 o'clock in the morning? No, I wasn't aware of that. How do you know? Because I got an alert telling me that this is what's going on. And then from that, we make sure that we circle back around. If the parent says, hey, can you have that student, can they come and get handled with care, then they do. Okay?
Thank you.
We also discussed the crisis team. Last year I was on the leadership committee and we met at the ESC, and one of the other districts had a crisis team. So Ms. Farmer, Mr. Wilson, and myself have discussed becoming like a crisis team. So what would happen is, if there was a crisis, then those students are pushed out to us and we deal with the crisis immediately. So for example, last year we had a small crisis with a student, and Ms. Farmer, myself, and Coach Michi actually met with the student 3 times that week just to handle the crisis. We found that has been successful, because then they start checking in with us. So now this student checks in with myself, Ms. Farmer, and Coach Michi every single day. And so we are going to push that out further Mr. Wilson actually talked to us about setting up some days to meet so it can be an official team, but we call it a crisis team and we meet with students when needed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Roman?
The first thing I want to do is do a shout out to your attendance person.
Yes.
I am so impressed because like you said, they're not learning at home. Or they're not learning what they should learn on the streets. So we could get them in school, fantastic. And I'm so happy to see that the attendance has decreased like that. The other thing that I want to comment is on the word special ed. I always hated that in labeling our children. And people have done that for years. So I am so happy to hear that we're not doing that anymore. Right. You know, because a lot of times people don't realize you're destroying a kid's self-esteem when you do that. Because they want to be, I'm going to say, normal, like every other kid. And then when you label them, it takes away so much from it. So I'm Miss thank you so much for just taking that out of our school system.
Well, I don't know if I can take full credit of that. I think Miss, right? Yeah, I can't take credit for that part of it, but yeah, thank you, Mr. Roberts.
Finally, Ms. Bishop, I'd like to commend you and your staff because what I heard today in this presentation was proactivity and solutions. There were some numbers early on that I was going to have questions about, but I didn't even have a chance to. I don't even have a chance to ask these questions now because your staff addressed what they were doing about those numbers during their presentations. I would also like to give a shout out to a member of your staff who is still making positive impact, Mr. Alexander. Okay, 4 or 5 years ago when I was here at Warrensville, Mr. Alexander taught me accounting. All right. Taught me about assets and liability.
Only 4 or 5 years ago?
45. You said I meant 45. Yeah, 4 or 5. No, 6 or 7 years ago.
Okay, we'll go with that.
Okay. Mr. Alexander taught me assets and liabilities back a long, long time ago. Taught me about general ledgers and the like. And I'm still a numbers guy to this day. He made a positive impact on my life those 6 or 7 years ago, and he is still making positive impacts, getting his students to school right now. So I would just like to give kudos to Mr. Alexander. And I would like to continue this applause for your entire staff. I'm really impressed by you guys.
Okay, thank you so much.
So the board president has declared that all our employees can go home. So we appreciate everybody. Thank our parent in the back for being here too. Thank you. Great presentations. Great work.
Good.
Yeah. Good job, Mr. Alexander.
Still doing it.
The new Miss Dean. He the new Miss Dean. He started in 78. I looked at his hire date. So that was good, though. That was a good presentation.
Yeah, it was.
Really good.
They're engaged.
I'm gonna let this.
So y'all, everybody knows. Great job, sir.
I'm gonna let this conversation end, and then we'll get on with it. I'm gonna let them finish that.
Oh,
I said I'm gonna let them finish that conversation, and then we get on with it. All right.
Just head in the door.
All right, moving right along. Item 2, district updates. We have nothing there. Item 3, new business. 3.1 and 3.2 have been submitted by Dr. Rock, so I will turn the floor over to him at this time.
Thank you, President Roberts. These are two policies, and the reason that I'm doing it this way to explain it to the board and go through, because these aren't coming from Neola. Okay. One policy was recommended by our auditors, and another one is a tweaking of an existing policy. So if we look at the use of credit cards policy, everybody has a copy. We're just honing in on the highlighted part down in the middle. And what has happened is there's been an expanded use of the credit cards. So we have to expand our credit limits. So that's what I'm asking for there, to where we'd have 5 cards, but also where we designate one card. I continue to carry one, and that's the one, what I carry. So if there's emergencies, Mr. Jolly calls me over the weekend, something happens, we got to pay Roto-Rooter or, and all the travels and stuff. So I carry one that has a larger balance, but not that big. And then I wanted to set up another card that's just dedicated for travel and professional development, because in the summertime when most of the programs are going, the professional development's going out, we always hit the limits and we have to scramble between what cards we put it on. So if we make one for that, and then also one designated for Amazon, we use Amazon every month for various departments, and then 2 other ones that are just for general use. So what this would do is it would have 3 designated cards, so they're only used for those specific purposes, and that helps us when we reconcile the cards every month with that. So that's the main changes that I'm looking for. So, and this policy is strike and bold. And again, this is just me explaining it to you. You could read it, and then you could do the readings, the first and second readings in future board meetings. So that's the credit card policy. Then the next one is our debt management policy. And again, this was recommended for best practice by our auditors. And I agreed with it because, I always say when we speak about finances, we're advanced. And, that's how we got this all done with the buildings and everything. So by having this policy, there's a lot of things in here that documents our best practices and how we do everything. So then this way it'll be memorialized for future boards into the future. So the biggest thing, so this is a whole new policy. It's been reviewed by our bond counsel, and it's been reviewed by Pepple Wagner, which is Dan Latour. And he also reviewed the credit card policies too. So both have been reviewed by legal counsel in both directions. And the big thing about this debt management policy, I'm not going to read it all the way through, but there's a section in the beginning where it says what the goals of the policy are. And again, it's to provide a pathway that shows the options of how we use debt financing. It also explains on how we disclose the relevant information. And it also defines how we optimize the cost and risk of the debt portfolio. Ours is pretty complicated, and we've seen that how when we refinance, I know I say this all over and over, but we saved over $18 million, $18.5 million. That's a big chunk of change for our district. So this all goes along with everything that we follow, but by us putting this policy in, it documents what we do and how we do it. So then it talks about the debt issuance and the different guidelines there. And then the cash financing, this section talks about where we want to dictate, what things would be normally we would pay for without doing any financing. For assets that have shorter lives or less than 5 years, recurring maintenance expenditures, when market conditions are unstable, that's where we decide that we want to just pay for it. But then on the other side of it, when we do want to do financing is for, and these are just examples, bus fleet purchases, like if we were buying a whole fleet of buses, but I don't know if that's even applicable to us because, our fleet isn't that big. We're like 13 or 14 buses. But anyways, light energy and fixtures and equipment. The big thing though is that section on lease agreements. We've utilized that because those are our certificates of participation. Those are lease agreements where the investors own that land and that building until we pay it off. Yeah. And that's a sale leaseback. So that explains on how that works. and the use and debt limits. Now, you'll notice if you do read into this, you'll see that the debt limits, one of them's 9% of our assessed value, which we've gone way over that. But the reason that you could go over that is when you go into the CFAP program, which means that we went through the OFCC. We lived all of that 8 years ago, and we went through all of that. But what's nice about this policy is it explains all of this. Then in the debt monitoring, there's actually once a year, our information gets reported to Moody's and all of the, we have to do, it's required. So Squire Sanders does that for us. And also the selection of finance professionals. I think this is very important here, especially where it says the treasurer shall have authority to determine which consultants to seek advice and guidance from on a case-by-case basis. I think that's very important because then if you just want my 2 cents on it, no one on the board or anybody else can be turned in a way that politically or tactfully, someone has someone they want to promise, hey, we want them to run this job for you or whatever. You want your treasurer to do this to make sure that it's, getting the best deal for us and the best consultants that we should get, period, with no strings attached, reading between the tea leaves on that. So I think that's real powerful there. And again, this is all reviewed by our auditors and legal counsel, and they sign off on this. So they think it's a good policy. And then the conclusion is the biggest one. Probably should put this at the beginning. Successful bond finance for a school district is a result of effective collaboration with the board leadership, school leadership, and independent consultants, which could also be your municipal advisor, bond counsel, and owner's representation. We use, check the box on all of those. We've used all of those to our advantage. So that concludes that section if there's any questions. But again, I just wanted to have a chance to go through some of the finer details of these two policies, and I think these would be very valuable for the district.
No questions. No questions here, Dr. Rock. Anyone else have any questions?
No questions.
All right. Thank you very much for that information, Dr. Rock, and we will, of course, have it on the agenda going forward. Next, item 4. Are there any announcements?
I actually have an announcement. The Northeast Ohio OSBA notified us that 2 of our board members, Mrs. Moomin and Mr. Freeman, are going to be honored for 10 years of service on the board at the spring conferences. And everybody has a copy of this at their desk. And there's two meetings. The one is on Wednesday, March 12th in Lorain County, and the other one's on Monday, March 31st at Delucia's and Warren, where we usually go. And that March 12th is a board meeting night, so it almost seems like we would probably go to the one
March
in Warren.
31st.
And just let me know, and I could sign up. If you want me to sign up the whole board, I could do that, or just let me know.
Where is that, Lorraine?
Warren.
No, we always go to one in
We have a
Warren.
meeting on the night of Lorraine, so we would be doing the Warren one.
Yeah, the one in Lorain is March 12th on a Wednesday. That's our board meeting
You
day.
can put me down. I'm
Yeah.
not crazy about the place, but you can put me down. I'll go for support.
She's not crazy about
I'm not crazy about the
Line us up.
That's pretty
So
good.
put everybody down?
We gotta go support our board. members.
I'll go
We'll be there.
support.
We'll all be there.
We have to. We have to go.
All right.
Where you gotta go to.
Barbara went last time
She went.
That was the
After,
only announcement because we had correspondence.
after Earl picked her up.
All right.
I do have an announcement.
That takes. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead,
That's
Mr.
all right.
Ms. Freeman.
Just as far as the upcoming national conference, I know Mimi's already registered, but if anybody else wanted to go to that COSBA annual conference in Atlanta, Georgia, we're selling out of that thing. We're almost up to 2,000. So I would advise if anybody would get with Alicia and tell her that you want to go to that to the COSBA annual conference in Atlanta, Georgia. They're already moving to a second hotel. Yeah, so it's at the Marriott. I mean, I think it's pretty far. They don't think it is, but I mean, I want to be at the host hotel. So they had a problem with putting me there. I'm like, I'm the chair. Can't I be there? So
What? Please repeat the dates, Mr. Freeman.
oh, I'm sorry. It's March the, well, you leave out on the 19th, but it's the 20th for 1 day pre-conference. And then the COSBA is the 21st through the 23rd, and that's a Sunday. And then I think Alicia has people coming back Monday. Me too. I
do want to just give those dates. If the basketball team makes it to the championship, the game would be on the 20th.
Shut the front door.
On the 20th?
Yeah, if the boys make it.
Okay.
Oh, they gonna make it.
They gonna be in the mix.
For,
The boys.
no, but I mean, that's not for state though, right? Or is it state? Are we there? Are we doing, have we started already?
No, the tournament hasn't started.
No, tournament haven't, but we're ranked second in Division 4 boys. So they got Wyoming and then them. So they're number 2 in the whole state of Ohio. Yeah, it's a school called Wyoming.
Gotcha. Okay, good enough.
All right, any additional announcements, board?
And then me and Keith and I think Mimi's going to the Beyond the Basics, that board meeting at the Holiday Inn for OSBA. That starts at 9 a.m. on the 22nd of February. Yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you for that as well. Next, if we have no more announcements or any if we don't have any additional announcements, that moves us to number 5. Do I have a motion for adjournment? All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. Dr. Rock, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Moomin? Mrs. Gator? Mr. Fuller?
Yes.
Mr. Freeman?
Yes.
Mr. Roberts?
Yes, motion passes 5-0.